steering wheel. Lots of steering wheel, yeah. Give him steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on! Whoa!
Your leg, mate, please. Your leg.
How the f*** is that possible?
I'm driving like a grandmaster. Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me? From our radio. The rest of the race. Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close him down and kill him. We've got a lunatic on the track down that interstate.
Annoyed.
Hey, Paul, I started that.
What happened?
I don't know. I fat-fingered that, Paul. That's what happened.
Okay.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 888. 3/8. Is there a message in that? I don't know. We'll find out as we get into the race because this is a race review podcast. It is the Monaco Grand Prix review, or as some of you refer to it as the Monaco Grand Prix review. Whew, this is Todd. Yep. AKA Negative Camber. You know what we do and why we do this. That's exactly what we do. But before doing that, you know what I have to do? I have to find a actual race car driver who I happen to know may have been racing in anger this weekend in Texas. You know him. You know who it is. Paul.
Yes.
You were racing this weekend. You
I
weren't
was.
sporting manager. You were literally race car driving this weekend.
I was literally race car driving.
On 20-year-old tires with cords showing, limited fuel, and a engine that produced about 120 horsepower.
It felt like it. Yeah. Actually, the tires that were on the car, I think, were from the last time I actually raced. I feel like it anyway. You're probably right. It was 20 years ago. Yeah. I was. It was fun. You know, it was very hot. It was just a bit. I was just trying to get my FIA international license, and to review that stuff, you just I had to do a race somewhere, and so I did it on the cheap, and boy, did I do it on the cheap. And it was a workhorse of a car, and and I didn't want to spend money on tires, but maybe I should have. I don't know. It was a bit of an ego clash, you know, because I knew what I was dealing with and why I wouldn't be super fast, but it was kind of annoying watching the timesheets. But I just got down with it and did the best I could, and I was pretty happy with how I was driving. I was just freaking arms and elbows everywhere.
Yeah, I saw your onboards.
It was pretty insane, but you know, sometimes that's kind of fun. You know, I wasn't going for a championship, wasn't going for money. I was just out there, you know, dicing out with a few people and stuff. So it was fun. It was good to get back in it. I think it'll be beneficial actually for me. Going back to the SRO team and the IMSA team and relating things a little bit, you do forget a little bit, you know, what it's like to actually try and get around someone who really doesn't want you to go round. You know, it's one thing doing it on the sim. You know, in karting I deal with it a little bit, but in a car you're going a whole lot faster and a whole lot more different things to do. So yeah, it was good fun. I was happy.
It's good. Yeah, everybody should be forced into a Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen incident once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so as I said, for what I had, I was actually pretty happy with my performance, but anyway.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Well, the important thing is keeping that international FIA license going so you can, at a moment's notice, hop into an F1 car should you need to. That's right. And anyway, I'm going to call myself so now I have to get my FIA bronze ranking, and then maybe I'll be more valuable. Yeah. You never know what can happen. Never know. You never know. You know, at this rate, Paul, you could end up driving IMSA. You could end up driving Le Mans. Technically, yes. So I mean, you know, it doesn't really, it's easy. It's easy. It doesn't take much, right? You just have to want it bad enough. That's all. It's easy. That's all. It's no money involved. Yeah, if you don't want it bad enough, you're not going to get it. If you do, guaranteed. Yeah, guaranteed. Yeah, exactly. It's easy. Oh, my. Well, in the midst of all that mayhem, I know you managed to force down the Monaco Grand Prix. Yes. You gagged that sucker down, didn't you? Yeah. It's like foie gras, that baby. Jesus. Yeah. It's like eating haggis with no scotch on it. With no scotch sauce on it, yeah. Yeah, more water, please. It's a bit gamey. It was a shame. I mean, we love Monaco, right? I mean, love Monaco. I love the track. It's the history. Yes. Seeing F1 girls go fast around there, but unfortunately, in the race, we didn't see them go that fast. But
it is a great event, and hopefully they learn from.
They learn from their mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, we're not expecting, an all-out dice and massive passings, but we are expecting a little intrigue, a little strategy,
Race.
a little, some big moves, at least, if they come off or they don't come off. I guess we saw that on the first lap, but that was about over after that. But so it's always, I always love watching it. Didn't enjoy this one so much, but we'll move on, right?
Yeah, we'll rebuild. We'll survive. Let's be honest. And let's start at the very top. Do a little formation. Let's set the table here. Let's be honest up front about this. When all the teams got their free tire change during the red flag, this effectively neutered the race and made it a processional event, turning. Basically, they came back out. They're running 4 to 6, 7 seconds off the pace of what they normally would run because everybody was in serious tire management mode at that point. And at a track like Monaco, where passing is really difficult, the pit stop is the one thing that can add some spice to the strategy and to the race. But that was thrown completely out of the window. We missed, I think by my count, 14 pit stops during this race because of that. So that may have added some drama and strategy, especially among the leaders, I think. Had they all had to box, I think that could have opened it up to undercuts, overcuts. Who knows? So that's what happened. Now, having said that, I must say that, that the whinging about Max winning everything was immediately replaced with massive whinging about a processional race. So there's no passing, which once again proves you can't please everybody. Either it's Max is winning everything. Okay, so Max doesn't win Monaco, but it sucks because there was no passing, and I get it. Monaco, for me, though, as you mentioned, Paul, we love Monaco. It's the reason I fell in love with the sport of Formula One. When I was a very small boy, I remember seeing Emo hustle his Lotus 72 around the damn streets of Monaco, and I was absolutely hooked from that moment on. And I'd like to say that I was into F1 before you were, but I wasn't. I'm sure you were into it before that. Being a few months younger than I was. But do you remember watching Emo run?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
When you were a little boy?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But back then, I mean, they looked like thunderous cars, but when you look at them compared to the cars now, they're so tiny in comparison to the track, Monaco, and we always want to race there. I get it, but the track has been shrunk around the size of the Formula One cars. So,
the cars are so big.
We know they haven't changed the track effectively for forever. Right, just a few
81
tweaks
years.
Here and there.
They've changed a few things, but
I just wonder, and the infrastructure of the nature of the place, if there's some way, some form or fashion, they can open something up to at least allow a passing opportunity somewhere, somehow.
It's kind of what Lewis was advocating too this weekend. Yeah. He was kind of saying they really need to look at something, a solution, to make this. A little bit more racy and
I mean,
passing.
If you came out of the tunnel and you could go straighter, and I said I don't know the topography of the other side of things, but if you could go straighter for just that little bit longer into a chicane very similar, I think it would be advantageous for passing. But then again, then you take away the left-hander. Is that to back? Is that the left-hander after the chicane? I mean, that's an awesome corner. The swimming
pool there,
yeah, that's an awesome corner for Formula Ones to take, But
it is.
And if you move the chicane further up, it would take some of the challenges of that corner away. But so there are things to look at. But
and you'd get rid of the Nouvelle chicane, which is iconic. Yeah, it's tough. All that being said, though, I mean, it was a processional race. I hate it that it was. Mm-hmm. The whole race was neutered by the red flag and the ability to change tires. As you and I've talked, recently this week and then certainly in the past, being able to change the tires during red flag is one thing, but if they made them fit the same compound and not allow them to switch compounds and still demanded running both compounds, that may have solved a lot of that.
Yeah, or given the option to, obviously, the other thing to think about is tire allocation, right?
Yeah, right.
put new hards on it. Well, I don't have any left. Okay.
Yeah.
It's this, but something needs to be done where that rule doesn't literally, and maybe Monaco is the only place where it really makes that big a difference. But
yeah. I remember, Seb, when he won, held off, was it Lewis? Because he got to change his tires. And
right.
His tires were shot.
His tires were shot before the red flag, and then, I get new tires. Yay.
New tires, and it was like, yay. Yeah. So that's it, I understand the spirit of that regulation, but it does and has had a serious impact on the racing, and in this case, it did. All that being said, how can you not like seeing Prince Albert in tears and spraying champagne of all things? It was the first Monegasque to win the Monaco Grand Prix since 1950, which means that Prince Albert's never seen that happen. He was born in 58. Yeah. So hence the tears. I just thought that was terrific.
That is the highlight of the weekend is getting Charles that win. He's come so close. He's had some bad luck. Some of it brought on by himself, but it was the race's saving grace was that everyone, it was a feel-good story to see him win it. And I don't want to take that away from his win because the race became what it was, but he earned it. And everything up through qualifying and everything was typical Monaco. Just, you got the gun to your chin and you're trying to set a lap. And he dominated the weekend and fully deserved the win. Yeah, absolutely. It was totally on merit for sure. And it was, it was a terrific. You're right. Watching him win. The Prince is elated. Charles had what? 2 DNFs, a DNS, fourth and an eighth, I think. It's just sort of the Monaco curse, right? Yeah. And so he wanted to lift that. Also, before we jump into Ferrari real quick, who knew that George Russell would become the lightning rod, the measuring post for the entire field that whole race? If George didn't fill a target on him, I don't know. Everybody ahead of him was targeting George and the distance and gap to George. Everybody behind George was targeting George and trying to attack him. So poor George was just like the rabbit amongst the hounds. Right. It was pretty funny. Okay, so let's talk about Ferrari up front. We'll jump in. Charles Leclerc, as you mentioned, an absolute terrific P1, took the victory at his home Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz, his teammate in P3. Charles looked set for destiny, as you mentioned, as early as Friday. Just dominated this weekend, had serious pace, fantastic pole position. Everything was basically set up for the win, and he converted that pole position to a win, changed tires into the red flag, then managed his tires all the way to the very end. He executed perfectly. He stretched out the lead when he needed to. He backed up the lead when he needed to, did everything perfectly. We've talked about this before, Paul. It's and I think it was at the Monaco Grand Prix. It was a previous race review did in years past where when you're driving and you've got that rhythm, then all of a sudden to slow down 4 seconds a lap, that's not easy to do. Not easy to do. They build up their whole weekend to be in that zone of fluidity around the track. And that's why track time is really important for the drivers. It's not just about setup and tire pressures and all this stuff. It really is about getting the driver's eye, hand, coordination, the brain working, slowing everything down the mind so they can go fast on the track. But it's kind of like an unrhythmic track, right? Like Singapore, where there's a flowing section, then there's not, then there's this, then there's a stop-start. It's really hard to keep that focus going. And so when you're told to go 4 seconds slower or whatever, that's harder probably than going faster. Really, because the rhythm, everything's not happening at the pace you're used to it, and you're trying to go slow but not make mistakes. You can make mistakes. Senna made a mistake, right? The famous mistake. He was 20 seconds in the lead. Right. He switched off a little bit for a split second because he had such a cushion, and he ended up in the barrier. It can happen to the very best. Obviously, happened to Senna. So, I can't. It may have looked easy for Charles, but I don't think it was easy at all. To keep everyone behind him, to not make the mistakes while trying to go slower. I think once they released him, I thought he was probably a lot happier and a lot, that's why they were like, Charles, you don't have to push this hard anymore, when they kind of released him to go a little faster. He probably wasn't even thinking about it. It was probably, I'm not pushing hard at all, I'm just back in the rhythm. So
right. Yeah, it was amazing. And Charles said that in the end, I don't know, it was 10 laps or so, he had tears in his eyes, the emotions were coming, and he was struggling to see because he was so overwhelmed with emotion. So a fantastic win for Charles. I mean, it just obviously, mea culpa, disclaimer up front, I am a Ferrari fan. Evidence behind me. So I'm super happy, as you can imagine, to see that win. But Charles deserved it, and all the other drivers agreed, and they all congratulated him. And I think everybody's genuinely happy for Charles. Teammate Carlos, in the end, while everyone got to change their tires, the red flag, Carlos got a complete redo, Paul, as he had clashed with Piastri on the opening lap at Santa Vote and had a puncture on his front left and then ran wide at Casino. And then the red flag came out. So that saved his bacon because they hadn't passed the first sector timing line. So they had to count back to the second or the first safety car line. And however they passed that safety car line is how they restarted, and he was in third. So the good news is that he didn't start at the back of the grid for the restart. He started where he initially qualified in third. So thankfully for Carlos, the red flag man, he had to count back, got a redo. And he drove a good race. He put a lot of pressure on Oscar late in the race to see if he couldn't maybe unsettle Oscar a little bit to try to squeeze into second place. Couldn't pull that off, but still a big win for Ferrari because, to be honest, as a Ferrari fan, they weren't able to really capitalize on the upgrades they brought at Imola last week. And they were beaten last week. So your head scratching thinking, oh my gosh, these upgrades really working or not. But here they clearly worked in the hands of Charles Leclerc and Carlos, finishing 1 through. A great result for Ferrari and a massive points haul. I think Charles is only 33 points behind Max now?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, but good job by Sainz. Lucky, obviously, that the fragility of the car was bizarre, right? I mean, it barely looked like they even touched.
I know.
And all of a sudden there's sparks flying and everything. So it was a little bizarre how much damage happened in such a minute incident. But lucky for Carlos that he got to get back around and kind of help keep the pressure off of Charles by being able to keep the pressure on Piastri, right?
Yeah, he was, and holding Lando off too, right? So that was good. A good run for him. Let's talk about McLaren. You had Lando Norris P4, Oscar Piastri P2. Piastri had that touch with Carlos, as you mentioned, on the first lap, but limited floor damage, I think, is what the team said. So he changed tires during the red flag, set about making the most of those. Brilliant qualifying lap from Oscar, Paul. Started in P2, out-qualified Lando Norris, who we all rate incredibly highly. This had that unfortunate blocking issue in Imola, and so redeemed himself in Monaco.
Right, else he would have been in the front row there too, right? So.
He would have been, yeah. So, I think Lando's got his hands full here. Oscar looked dynamic, executed perfectly, made a couple lunges at Charles, didn't really pay off in Monaco. Yep. His very first podium in Monaco, the pace, he said, was very slow, which was difficult for him. At the start of the race, had a couple looks at Charles, didn't work. But anyway, I can't overemphasize how well I thought Oscar did this weekend.
Yeah, he did very well. I mean, he's done well, as I said, the last weekend too. I mean, Zach's got to be like, it was all worth it in the end. I mean, remember the controversy with the Alpine fighting it out, and obviously Oscar chose the right team, as you see where Alpine are right now. Yeah, he was right to fight, bite off his arm and escape from that clause, to keep going.
Got his arm off of the Alpine trap,
and so it's great. I mean, he's obviously very, very fast. His race pace has been not quite up to what Lando has, but he's not far off, man. And it's all McLaren's all the better for it. I mean, look at those, look at that team and how well they're doing. So. Piastri he's worthy of the hype that he had.
I agree.
He's cool as a cucumber too.
He is.
He is. And
he's not plowing into everybody and first lap nutter kind of rookie stuff. I mean, he's not a rookie, but still, he has some sage wisdom on that, on those shoulders of him.
Yeah, he's a smart guy and fast. So McLaren have really done a good job in getting their pairings sorted.
Well, McLaren, Paul, had a fantastic weekend, period. They had a second place at Monaco, second place at Indy 500, which Zach Brown was at. And then I think even their Formula E was a second place. So seconds all the way around in all three series. Great weekend for McLaren.
Yeah. Oh, how about that Indy 500 finish, eh?
Yeah, Joseph
that was good.
Newgarden. It was good. Yeah,
that was very smart by Newgarden. I didn't think he had it because when Pato all backed off at that one point with two, I'm like, okay, that was pretty smart. But then he went for it still too early. But Newgarden was so fast through 3 and 4 all the time. It was like he was very good through there. So
the whole time I'm thinking 3 and 4 because the McLarens were passing Newgarden at 3 and 4. Newgarden was repassing at 3 and 4. I was surprised Pato went early on 1 and 2.
Right.
I felt like he should have waited till 3, 4.
Right, exactly. But I think Newgarden was just so good through 3 and 4. He didn't think he could pull it off, but it was a heck of a race, the Indy 500. Made up for the Monaco race, right? It was a heck of a race. It did.
Yeah, it was a good race. Yeah, and good on Penske and Joseph Newgarden. It was just a great result for him. Back-to-back Indy 500s.
Yeah, impressive.
It's fantastic. Very impressive. Yeah. It's a rare air up there. Let's see. Lando was heavily engaged in a battle with George Russell behind him, trying to gain enough gap to give him a free 21-second pit stop. That ebbed and flowed. McLaren reckoned if they could get that gap, Paul, and get that free stop, then put on fresh rubber late in the race, that Lando very well could end up on the podium. Yep. And they just couldn't get the gap they needed. There was one moment where it was
There was one moment. Yeah. But it was like if they flubbed it, if they dropped the wheel nut, then he was stuck behind Russell for the rest of the race, right?
That's exactly right. And you have to think that at the 21 second mark, they didn't have that comfort level.
No, and I wouldn't have either. I wouldn't have risked it. I didn't think it was worth the risk. If they could have pulled that at 25 second, then sure. But it was too close to call. One little error, mistake, and they've dropped a lot of points. So I think it was best to do what they did.
Yeah, and as George showed us, Monaco is the one track where favoring track position over fresh rubber can actually work out.
Right.
So let's talk about Mercedes. You had Lewis Hamilton P7, George Russell P5. Mercedes was one of the teams that started both cars on the hard compound. So this meant that during the red flag, they changed tires, of course, but onto the mediums. So they were on mediums for the balance of the rest of the race, and that was always going to be a tough ask, right? This is what made George the sort of linchpin of the race as he drove slowly to begin with, really giving the leaders an ever-increasing gap. And they wanted that free stop. So, there were even radio chatter. Why is George going so slow? He's just going to give him a free stop, But in the end, he didn't, right? George was just giving the leaders enough and slowing his pace just enough that tactically he prevented the free stop ahead of him while going fast enough to keep the cars behind him off. Yeah. When Verstappen boxed for fresh rubber, Mercedes didn't box George to cover. And they chose track position over fresh tires. And in Monaco, I think that worked out. One of the few circuits that probably would work out. So that prevailed over the fresh rubber. And it was George. George was able to hold on to keep Max behind him to come home P5. I thought it was actually a very measured, good race from George.
Yeah, and you would think, obviously, George's pace was backed up. That if he saw Lando go in, he would have dropped the hammer. And if the gap was 20 seconds, it would have been 18 by the time he came around, right? So you really needed a bigger buffer. I mean, ultimately, what was happening up front was perfect for the Mercedes because they'd chosen the hard and had to run the medium that long. If they'd been tasked with pushing harder, they would have been done for.
Yeah,
but ultimately, the top 3-4 weren't concerned with where Mercedes were going to end up. But if they wanted to completely destroy Mercedes race, they would have just gone for it and pulled a big gap, right?
Yes.
Would have been fun to watch, a bit more fun to watch at that point. But because they did what they did, that really helped Mercedes stay in the points.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. The team did box Lewis, and he made serious inroads on Max. But the team admitted that they made, or this is what Toto said. He said there was some sort of miscommunication suggesting that, and I don't know if he's running blocker for Lewis or if this is true. I'm assuming it is. No reason to doubt Toto. Actually, I do.
I doubt him.
Never doubt Toto. I love Susie's Monaco. The lifestyle of the rich and famous Monaco moments posts with them boating into the harbor. It's just wonderful, wonderful life, Toto. Good on you, mate.
Yeah.
And so he said that there was communication error, that they didn't alert Lewis that the outlap was critical.
Yeah.
And so maybe Lewis didn't, go into hammer time on the outlap, and that allowed Max to box and come out ahead of him. And you could see that if Lewis didn't know and thought he was safely on the undercut, then he didn't know he had to push like crazy to try to make that undercut work. So that's what they said.
Yeah, it's tough. On the F1 TV feed, they were saying, well, Lewis should know this, right? He should know it was critical. It's always critical. Your outlap and in-lap pace is always critical, but you do normally hear those commands from Mercedes. They don't usually shy away from calling that out, and maybe Lewis went out and tried to protect his tire. The more you push on those first couple laps, the less tire you're going to have at the end of a stint. So he may have been a bit more cautious, not hearing that command. So either way, they're both kind of erred, I would say. But ultimately, it cost him a position. Yeah, and I think, in fairness to Lewis, I don't know that you can just come around out of the pits and just hammer those tires. I think you got to work them into the heat window. Yeah, I mean, but that's still decades of experience.
Yeah, he should know.
He should be able to get the most out of that tire.
Yeah,
on the outlap. Certainly in IMSA, and even the SRO, we do a lot of, looking back at previous races on how the outlaps went, who's driving what, and how much time you lose on an outlap. And you can lose a lot of time if you're not coming out of the pits on the button, and it can be critical to your results, really. So it's something every team should be analyzing all the time, really. Yeah,
Lewis was a little salty about the new front wing that George got. After the race, he was talking about
not bad for a number two, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Which I thought was an interesting comment from Lewis. It's hint, hint, nod, nod. As Lewis kind of does, he sort of telegraphs in not so direct language his feelings, which he's
he has his heart on his very fluffy
yes, he does
sleeve.
Yeah. He has a tendency to do that and, drop mental anchors every once in a while.
Absolutely.
And he was a little salty about that. But it's interesting because the Sky crew said that when they talked about the wing, Lewis didn't want it. And there was a good reason he didn't. Because there was only one wing. And if there was any damage to it and he had to switch the wing in qualifying or something like that.
It would upset the whole balance of the car, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been replacing a like part. So he would have got a grid penalty.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yep. And I wonder what happens in the race. Oh, maybe it doesn't. That rule doesn't apply if you do it during the red flag. I know.
Yeah.
In the red flag,
not.
you can make repairs like for like parts as well. Does the front wing count? I don't know.
I can't recall.
Yeah.
I don't know No, because technically they're in parc fermé condition
during the race.
Yeah.
Or are they released from parc fermé when the race starts? I don't know. Page 796 on the FAA.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody will look that up. I don't know that.
Someone else look it up.
You would expect me to know that, having watched all this. You can put a new front wing on, obviously, during the race.
Right.
I don't know if you can put on a dramatically different wing.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know that you can. But anyway, that I just thought it was a heads-up call by Lewis. He didn't want to put himself at risk and get a grid penalty if anything happened to the wing, because there's only one.
But sometimes he does like to be the victim a little bit.
He does.
And it's kind of like when you make that announcement at the beginning of the season, it's going to be you're already on the way out. You're at the exit doors already, marked off for you. So it's going to be very difficult for the team to keep rallying behind you like it was. It's going to be different. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's been years as like this tight, but it's gradually unraveling, and it's maybe a bit hard to accept.
Yeah, and Lewis knows it. He doesn't mean that he's got to be happy about it, but he knows. I mean, look, if they'll do what they're doing to Adrian Newey, they're going to do it to Lewis. I mean,
right.
Come on. Anyway, Lewis said the tire change made it a non-eventful race. And there you go. Let's see. Red Bull, Sergio Perez DNF, Max Verstappen P6. Here's what everybody wants to know, Paul. What do we think about the Perez issue? Sergio was clipped by Kevin Magnussen and the Haas on the run-up to Massenet, and this collected both cars as well as Nico Hülkenberg's car, leaving them all out of the race. So the stewards reviewed that. Everybody thought it was a foregone conclusion. Kevin would get a penalty, couple points, sat down. Nothing happened after they reviewed it. The reason my hunch, I'm guessing here, the reason I don't think he got a penalty is because in looking at Sergio's onboard camera, going up that hill while he is climbing up the hill, Sergio was looking right into his mirror. He knew Kevin was there.
Right.
So now we could argue, it was Kevin fully alongside? No. Was his nose at the right rear? Yes, that's where it was. But he knew he was there, right? And did he have to yield? I don't know. In my mind, I think it was a poor choice by Kevin.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. Sergio can be seen looking right in his mirrors. I have to think he knew he was there, and there was no points given. But how did you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I did see the in-car stuff. I guess I didn't pick up on the mirror thing, so I'll have to go back and look at that. That is a bit of blame, I guess, if he did see him and he chose to shut the door. But honestly, that's what you do going up that hill. And I don't think Kevin had any place to have his nose inside at that point. It was a very low percentage option. And being where Kevin is right now, I think that was even worse a decision. So Perez is in the lead. He's got the right to the line that he was taking, honestly. If he did see him and he was kind of easing over to shut the door for Kevin, a bit of blame, but I'd still say Kevin made a very rash choice of keeping his car there, especially, I mean, the way the track meanders all the way up there and the barriers are in and out and in and out. I don't see that he would have made it to the next undulation in the barriers, quite honestly, even if Perez has given him that room.
Yes. Well, Paul, you know what they say.
What do they say?
That's what they say. Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that.
Really?
Yeah. I haven't heard any of your buttons today.
Really?
Yeah. It's been kind of
that's
peaceful.
Great. That's just great. You haven't heard any of my buttons.
No.
Really?
Yeah. You'll have to reenact them for me.
I guess I will. Okay. Yeah. Well, that means I've got a lot of editing of the podcast to do.
Let me guess what the quote was. Was it, "If there is no longer a gap"?
That's what it was.
There you go. All right.
Yes,
this could be a fun game.
Yes. Yeah, I'll play. Nobody can hear any of my soundboard. I'll play it, and then you'll have to guess what I was. What I was trying to do.
Try and patch it together with what we're talking about versus what could Todd absolutely be pushing the button on the soundboard for. What
would he be doing? What would he have chosen? Yeah. Well, anyway.
Anywho.
Much editing to do. Okay. So, let's see. Where was
Kevin
it?
Magnussen. Okay, we're at Sergio. Now we're back to Max.
Now we're moving to Max.
Yeah. Although Max, one thing about Sergio, they're still talking about him, the likely re-signing for Red Bull, which I find bizarre.
I saw that today,
and
I'll be honest with you, I was a little little surprised.
I'm very surprised.
Yeah, I was a little surprised at that.
Unless this is another thing that Red Bull have to do to appease Max and keep him in the team. I don't know.
Point.
Yeah.
Max may have said, no, Sergio's fine.
Yeah. Do not bring Sainz here.
Or Liam Lawson.
Yeah. He knows Sergio's in that place in the corner where he's safe, and that's the way Max likes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm a little surprised. Let's see, Max. For Max, he had a bad qualifying, started 6th. That's where he finished. And he made the comment after the race. He said, "This is boring. He should have brought his pillow." And everybody was incensed by him being critical of the race. Meanwhile, they're all complaining. I mean, the whole thing is comical. Everybody's bitching and moaning about no passing, processional. This sucks. And then Max says it's boring, and everybody's, oh, pearl clutching that he was, denigrating the race. It's terrible. It was boring. And Max just, he called it like it was. Yeah. The team boxed him to cover Hamilton's stop, and it worked. Max able to do that, finish 6th. But here's the important takeaway for me out of Red Bull was what was causing their problem, right? And the best I can gather from reading from journalists and articles and commentary on the broadcast was that in order for their aero to work properly, they need to strictly control the ride height of that chassis. And in order to control the ride height, you have to have a very stiff suspension. And when you have a very stiff suspension, when you go over a lot of curbing, it really unsettles the car. So they were struggling with that. So circuits, you might argue, going forward, circuits that have a lot of curbing, where drivers take a lot of curbing, could be the Achilles heel of Red Bull.
Right.
Going forward. Also, that's not to suggest that I'm marginalizing the performance upgrades that McLaren and Ferrari have made. I think it's a combination of possibly both. But I do think that's kind of where Red Bull, if you're looking for an Achilles heel, that may be it.
Yep, sounds about right. When you're back at the track, where they, with Miami and yeah, I mean, it all makes a lot of sense. And then the next race is Canada, which is still a little bumpy, and
got curves.
You got to ride some big curves to make everything work, right? So,
you do. Yeah, you do. So there you go. A Hungaroring could be a bit of a challenge too. It's like Monaco without the walls, they call it. Let's talk about RB Visa Cash App, buy one, get one free, as James Valls called it. Dan Ricciardo P12, Yuki Tsunoda P8. Yuki had a good start, and the team were able to change to hards for the balance of the race, which is what he needed. So Yuki finished pretty much where he started, down in P8. He was happy about that, very proud of himself. Said he was very frustrated having to manage his tires, but he said he kept his cool.
Oof. That's a change. That's a turn up for the books, Yuki. Yeah,
very interesting.
Yes. Obviously, you've been listening to our podcast.
Obviously. Yeah. Dan got jumped by Alonso at the restart. Took a while for him to get his hard compound tires up to temp. Finished down in P12. Not a lot to talk about.
No, not much.
Really, for the rest of these teams.
Although maybe there was another great sensational photograph with P8 on their pit board and everyone cheering and jumping in the air for joy. I don't know.
Ooh, yeah.
Not lost.
Maybe not. Yay us. Let's see. Williams, Alex Albon, and P9. Logan Sargent, P15. Alex had a good start and stayed in P9 for the race. He was trying to give Tsunoda some trouble there for the mid part of the race, really trying to close in because he was thereabouts with Yuki, but unfortunately Yuki was managing his pace, and once they freed and gave Yuki the leash, he pretty much disappeared from that on. So Albon ended up finishing in P9 where he started. Logan Paul, he actually stayed on hard compounds during the red flag. So this precipitated an additional stop for him, dropping back. The team felt like, look, maybe we could get some fresh rubber late in the race. Maybe he could claw his way back up. That
up
didn't
to P14.
Up to P14. Woo! Yes, up to P14.
Sorry,
didn't
Logan.
really happen, unfortunately. So there you go. That is what happened. So having said that, the team might have been banking on a safety car, possibly. or that cars ahead of them would really start graining. And I think maybe they were hoping that might happen. Didn't happen for Leclerc.
Yeah. Overall, I think it was positive for Williams. This isn't the track
I do too.
They'd score any points. So for them to come away with a ninth place is actually a really big positive for them. Plus, they didn't crash a car. So
yeah, agreed. That's good. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, P10, Esteban Ocon, and DNF. Alpine had a good weekend going with a nice qualifying performance from Pierre, which was a nice turnaround given where they were on Friday. I thought Friday is like going to be a tough weekend, but then pulled it off with a P10 Q3 appearance for Pierre. So I thought this is positive. Heading into the race, Pierre says that they were instructed, they had a big team debrief, not to battle each other. This is Monaco. We need every position we can get. Yeah. And that happens to be the very first thing Esteban did. Right out of the gate.
Go figure that. Esteban Ocon, breaking the law.
Right out of there. Yeah, did we talk about this? I don't recall having that 20 minutes ago. Heading into Portier, dove down the inside of Pierre, back left tire, clashed with Pierre's front right tire. He squeezed Pierre up against the wall, launched Esteban's car. Too much damage to continue after the red flag. Esteban got a 5-place grid penalty for Canada because of that, and he got a real tongue lashing from Bruno Famin in the French press. Pierre, thankfully, salvaged his race and managed to bring it home P10, scored a point for the team. So it was a good result from Pierre. But
it was actually a great pass by Ocon. I mean, if he could have got the car turned, but obviously, if you make that agreement before the race, then Pierre was probably not expecting it at all. So maybe the door was a bit more open than if there were conflicting teams racing each other. But it was actually a pretty, he got fully alongside. But I think if you made that agreement, then Pierre probably wasn't expecting it at all. And then Ocon ultimately couldn't get the car turned enough on the exit to avoid the collisions.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's those guys they were looking like they were really getting along. And now I think that whole relationship is torn to shreds again.
Yeah.
And I think, what they say, Ocon's on the way out, so it looks like.
Yeah, I think that's what they were talking about.
So job achieved by Gasly, right? Ocon was there. Gasly comes in. Ocon leaves.
Yeah, there
it's
you go.
Like Thunderdome at Alpine,
Yeah, problem solved. Let's see. Kicks out Bottas in P13, Joe Guan Yu in P16. Not much to talk about here either.
Nope.
They boxed.
Move along.
Boxed Bottas early. Boxed Joe late for softs. Didn't pay dividends. Neither can make the most out of the fresh rubber, getting the points. And then finally, Haas. Well, we talked about that under Red Bull, Hülkenberg, and Magnussen DNF. Not much to talk about there. Turn 1 up the hill to Massenet. We know what happened there.
And Hulk nearly got through, and he just got clipped at the last one.
I know, just at the last minute. I think, he was mashing on that accelerator, to get through that. And it was unfortunate. Let's give away some awards. First award is Move of the Race. No. All right, Paul, Move of the Race. What'd you have?
Move of the Race, I'm going to go with Piastri on the outside of turn 1. It was, Sainz actually got a good start. And Piastri could easily have just kind of given way because Sainz had nearly earned that spot, but he held tough on the outside. It did cause a little bit of a collision, but it wasn't much at all. But it did have extreme repercussions on Sainz for right after that. But I thought Piastri holding on the outside, I think that was good.
Yeah,
setting the stage for what kind of driver he is.
Right. I had the Marshals for repairing the track. They are the best of the best in Monaco. They really are.
Yeah, getting cars off the track, fixing stuff. It's crazy how good they are.
They had a whole bunch of Armco they had to replace, and they did it in no time. I mean, any other track that had taken a lot longer.
Yeah,
very impressed with the Marshals. They, to get us racing as fast as they did. I thought it was a fantastic move.
Yep.
Let's do Donkey of the Race. Yes. I don't know why I played that music because nobody can hear it. There's just a big gap.
Sometimes a pregnant pause adds power to the conversation.
That's right. Adds power to the podcast. Just a long 10-second
Or is
pause.
it choose your own music?
Yeah,
everyone can go back.
Tune.
Go ahead, edit the whole thing. Add your own tunes, make it fun, send it back. Someone will win a prize. I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Something like that.
Why I did that. Well, you know the tune. You've listened to enough podcasts. Just hum it along.
That's true.
You know.
We should.
Let's see. Donkey the race. Who'd you have?
I'm giving it to the tire rule.
Very good.
You know.
Very good. Yeah.
Could have given it to Magnussen, but I think the tire rule had a bigger implications on how donkey the race was. So
yeah. Good call. I'm giving it to Esteban. If the team talked about it before the race, come on, man. The very first thing you don't do right out of the gates is to try to battle Pierre. Come on.
Yeah.
Pierre out-qualified you. Slot in and see what you guys can make out of the race.
Round around,
Right. And then finally, drive the race, Paul. Who'd you have?
Got to give it to Charles, right? The highlight of the weekend was Charles Leclerc. Every session, every day. Great result. Good for him.
Absolutely.
Holding back emotions, very easy to make a mistake, even in those conditions, Yeah. So, phenomenal.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, that's pretty much it for the podcast. And that's that, as they say, is that. But, look, not a lot to talk about the Monaco Grand Prix. I was going to regale you with all kinds of soundboard stuff, but I've managed to cock that up, too.
Yeah.
Paul, what can I say? I'm still trying to recover.
Yeah, that's it. Just blame it. Say it.
I'm just going to blame that,
Get some sympathy that way.
Yeah, right.
Be all right.
Everyone's like, oh, poor Todd.
Milk it for all it's worth.
Yeah. Well, they did say 6-week recovery time. I'm only 3 weeks into this.
Okay. Looking good.
That's my excuse. Anyway. But if you like the podcast, be sure to give us some love. Give us a good rating at your favorite podcast player. A huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this without you. So thank you so much. And until we do this again, Paul, we have Canada coming up.
When is that? Next weekend? 2 weeks.
No, is it 2 weeks? Yeah, too fast to get to Monaco to Canada in a week, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's on the 9th.
Fly them over. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
well, we got Detroit Grand Prix next week, so we'll doing our own street race.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Intriguing. Going to be intriguing because I don't know if you've seen the pit lane there. It's a dual pit lane. There's cars on the right and cars on the left, and then they converge and pit out. It's pretty crazy. So be interesting to see how that works out. What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong? It's like the Hot Wheels tracks of old where they crossed.
Yeah. Exactly. That was fun.
Or Scale Electrics did that, right?
They did it. Yeah, they all did it. Yeah.
So that'll be fun. All right. Well, make sure you watch that in Detroit next weekend.
Yes.
And then in 2 weeks, Paul and I'll be back to review the Canadian Grand Prix. Woo-hoo. So until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
It's not what I feel I've got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive